think one of the things that people, including ourselves, continually do is trying to figure out time, find more of it, use it effectively, be present. And with a million different things coming at you all at once from both a career and personal and family perspective, there's just so much to take care of, especially if you want to be an optimizer like we tend to be. And so this topic of using money, when you get successful, you create money and generate income, using that money, or at least a portion of it, to buy back your time is one that's often coming up with our client conversations and certainly in our own households. So we'd love to just talk about that today with you.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic because so much financial advice out there is in a way about not using your money. Right? It's saving it, it's putting it at the bank and moving on, which is not bad. Obviously, we need to save, we need to invest wisely if you're going to grow wealth for your biggest financial goals, but it ignores a whole other side of money, which is using it, deploying your dollars in a way that helps you live the life you want to live without jeopardizing your financial goals. And that's a tricky balance to strike, but it's really important, especially when most people, will measure wealth by specific numeric metrics, how much you make, how much you have in the bank, your net worth, all very important, very critical. I'm not saying that we can ignore those things, but again, it misses like the flip side of some other measurements of wealth that maybe are more important. And you need to assess, the hard numbers to determine your overall financial health, but you also have to account for how much time you have and the degree of freedom that you have in choosing how you use that time.
Well, it certainly comes down to living a life worth living. A lot of times when it comes to money, people are making choices based on fear. Like they're not looking impressive enough, or they're not safe enough and they need to save more for the future. They need to have more stuff, so they spend on material items. And I think that's where people get stuck in the rat race, where if you can be strategic and intentional about using your money to figure out where can this best be spent so that, yes, I can enjoy myself, I can be confident about my future, but I can also, and most importantly, I think, free up your time so that you can live that life worth living. That's the essence of it. And I think people miss that point. It's very easy to miss the point because it sounds backwards. Well, I'm going to make a lot of money and then I'm going to use it to pay somebody else to do things for me. Does that make sense? Well, I mean, depending on where you came from, it does or doesn't make sense, or it is or isn't comfortable. And I think that's part of it too. Both of us, we've talked about this before, but we didn't come from a place where we were paying a nanny or a house manager, which is something we can get into in a little bit as an outsourced mechanism. In fact, my parents, if they heard that somebody had a nanny, they would say, wow, they must make a ton of money. They must be so wealthy. And that's not us. We don't do that. We just do our own stuff. We save our money and we do the chores that we need to do.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's that aspect of it of like, you just assume like, oh, you must have to have so much money in order to do X, Y, or Z. And I think there's also, depending on how you were raised, like a moral component to it. Because I feel like my parents, when they would see that, like, oh, someone has a nanny, it would be like a derogatory, like, oh, you're paying someone else to raise your own kids. Like it was always a very negative connotation with outsourcing work basically to someone else. Like I grew up with, like, if you work hard, you put your head down and everything will work out. And that's, I still have that mentality of like, I need to do everything myself, or it's like some sort of moral failing, because that's not how you live your life. You work hard and good things happen. Like that was very much, I still think my parents believe that. And I think there's some truth in it. I think there's value in hustling. I can put my head down and I will work. I am a workhorse for sure. And it's kind of a linear way of thinking. One, I think that's one problem you run into. And it's also very limiting in like an emotional way, because it doesn't have to be a moral thing of asking for help or, hiring a house cleaner so that you can get an hour back, 2 hours, 3 hours back in your week to spend with your kids. It doesn't have to be good or bad. Again, it's all about what works and what doesn't, and how you're using your money. And I think using your money to buy back time is probably one of the best uses of your money. And that's what we really want to get into today, is doing that, why you should, and how to do it.
Yeah, how to do it efficiently and continue to do what you believe, right? I mean, this isn't about creating a lazy life to live, because certainly that's not something that engages me. I'm not motivated to sit around in a hammock, right? And do nothing. I very much like to, as you do, like to work hard, engage in life, be challenged, and be aggressive about it, whether it's the gym or it's the business. It's something that really I want to be engaged in it. So it's not about working less. It's just working smarter. It's working smarter. It's working more intentionally, and therefore living smarter, living more intentionally. And so if we step back here for a second and just talk about how to develop a framework or rules of thumb to even understand what's on the table here. Should we be outsourcing or not? And if we are a family that it makes sense to outsource, what kinds of things are outsourceable and certainly make the most impact to outsource? And then we can talk about maybe some just general examples of success, like what happens when you outsource, and maybe even some surprising pieces of that. Hey, I outsourced this thing and didn't realize, but wow, this benefit was discovered. So I think all that really can help people think about how to move forward with this.
I think it all starts, as with most of our advice, is set out what matters to you. What are your values? What's most important to you? So for a personal example, like we talked about the nanny, we have intentionally made the decision not to hire outside childcare support. Our daughter is in preschool, but we don't have like a regular babysitter. We don't have a nanny, because preschool doesn't go in the summer. So she's at home in the summer, and that does impact my ability certainly to work because I'm spending more time with her. But that's an intentional choice that we made because that was really important to me. Is that's the number one thing I want to buy back my time for, is to spend with her and with you, Eric, and other, friends and family, spending our time with people. That was my number one priority. And it was a bit of a trial and error because we did initially try to hire a babysitter to pick her up from preschool and bring her home. But even that, we realized, well, it might be giving me another hour in the day to work, but that's an hour in the afternoon that I don't get with her. And when you have, you're getting up in the morning and you're hustling out to get to school. And then when you get home, you got to make dinner, you got to get her in the bath, you got to do bedtime. Like it's such a crunch to me. It felt that way, that actually using, our money to hire a babysitter to quote unquote help, it wasn't actually helping. It was adding more stress. So that's just one example of looking at what is most important to you. What do you value the most on an emotional and whatever level, like more intangible level, but then also on the practical side, because that example of like, all right, I don't want a babysitter picking up my kid from preschool. That might not be an option for you and your family based on your work setup. Like you might need someone to do that. And that's perfectly okay to get done everything else you've got going on. It's just, let's put this all out on the table. What are our practical needs? And then what best aligns with, the day that we want to create. And I think that's where you start to build this framework.
Yeah, that sounds like a smart way to go. I mean, certainly I'm involved in this decision-making process with you. And I think maybe some of the things that in that you've mentioned a few things, but things like cleaning the house, grocery shopping or delivery, food prep are all really important things that take time. And some people actually enjoy doing them. Like you've told me in the past that some of these things you enjoy doing, which doesn't make sense to me, but it clears your mind and gets you out of the house and gets you thinking about something different. But still, it takes a lot of time. And could your time be best used elsewhere? And I think I'll get to that in a second. But another thing would be childcare, right? We just talked about why we don't necessarily do that, but that is an option for people. So those are some of the general categories I think are most common when it comes to outsourcing with your personal life chores to either free up your time for family or free up your time to work in the business.
Well, so let's start with on that side, the personal side, because I talked about what we didn't do. So in terms of putting it all on the table, you're right. Like I kind of weirdly enjoy cleaning the house because it's like a meditative thing for me. And I don't have the time practically. Like that needs to go to somebody else. So that is something that we outsourced. The house manager, we can talk about the specifics of that, but that is someone that we hired to handle some light cleaning, helping take care of the cats. If you have pets, somebody can help with that. meal prep, things of that nature, some errands, like returning things from the store, returning library books, that sort of thing. So I think there's the personal side, there's also the business side. But then if we're trying to go in order of like the framework that you're building out, I think the other piece that we're missing before we get into specifics is how do you make that work from a financial perspective? Like Eric, as a financial advisor, how do you identify in somebody's cash flow, what do you actually have available? How do you build a budget around this? Or how do you think about the financial piece of using this money that arguably, well, I could save it, I could invest it, I could use it to buy something else. How do you think about the dollars piece of it?
Well, there's a couple of different angles at this. Firstly, for someone who already makes enough money to afford their general lifestyle and has enough money to save for the future and still has excess, it might be just a matter of using that excess for outsourcing various parts of your personal or business life, for that matter. We haven't talked about that. I probably won't in this episode, but there are things you can outsource in the business too to make that more efficient, and just using that money as a tool to get that outsourced. But then there's also the other side of the coin where you're actually using the outsourcing as leverage. So just like you use a mortgage when you buy a house as leverage to own a house that maybe you couldn't afford to buy in cash, you're outsourcing, you're paying somebody to do something so that frees up your time to come back and do more work. So if your hourly rate is $300 in your business or profession, and you're paying someone $100 or less to do something on the personal side, you're getting an hour back to make $300 when you're paying out $100. You've just made a $200 profit there. So that's really important to use as leverage. And that could actually grow your income to a place where you end up being that first person I shared, where you have the money now to just be able to pay somebody to do things and it not impact your cash flow at all because you have excess.
Are there other things that you think of in terms of priorities? Like, so if someone walks through this and they're like, I want to buy my time back. And when you go through that exercise of, I think first looking at, what do I do right now? I think it's like the first column. And then if you moved everything of like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to free up my time, and or my time is too valuable to be spending on that, to like the leverage piece. Like I can make more money by doing my work or by dedicating more focus to my job than it costs me to outsource something like, cleaning or yard care. How do you think about, now that you have all these things that you could outsource, what goes first? If you don't have, the unlimited money right now, you need to make one choice. How do you think about allocating those dollars to buy back time?
Well, again, I think you could look at it from two different perspectives. One is, what is the cheapest thing to outsource? Right? If you can take this one thing, it takes up so much time, but it would be super easy to pay someone $15 an hour to take care of. That should be an automatic. Shed those things that are just simple to outsource. Or you could also look at it, and this could also be a lens to look at it through, is what do I hate doing? Just like I just despise doing this thing and I just need to get rid of it. Now, if that thing is super expensive to outsource, maybe you have to second guess that. But if it's you hate doing it and it's super cheap to outsource, that is the first thing to go. So you might start by just creating a list. And we've done this for the business with the consultant we're working with, but identify all the things that you're doing at home and you put them in a column. And then you make a separate column. And in that column, it's a shed column. So anything that you are doing now that you should not be doing or don't want to do anymore, put it in that column. And so you end up with a column of things that you'll keep doing, and then a column of things that your intention is to shed those. And then you start to organize the shed column into, again, the cheapest things to get rid of and the things that you hate doing most to get rid of. And that gives you a priority list of what to get rid of first.
That shed column can also help you create almost like a job posting. And again, you don't have to be running a business for this. This is actually how we created the job posting for our house manager position. So what we put in the shed column for me, what I was doing at home that I did not want to do anymore, and or it was actually too costly for me to continue doing it because the time I was taking to make a grocery list, for example, was 30 minutes that I could have been working, earning more money. So the things that are on this list, general meal prep, just roasting veggies, baking chicken, putting, just in a big batch, putting it in the fridge so that everybody has lunch and dinner for the week. Grocery shopping, managing like home supply, paper towels. Do we have paper towels? Do we need to reorder them? Put them on the list, that sort of thing. Laundry, very light house cleaning. I think house cleaning itself is something that you can and should, if you're a professional or you're working long hours, you've got kids, that's probably to me the number one thing to outsource, because there are a lot of businesses, there are a lot of individuals that are out there running their own businesses to clean houses. And I think most people charge a pretty reasonable rate for the work that's being done. And that's an easy way to get something off your mind, off your plate, free up time. To house cleaning, but also the house manager could do, like, you got to wipe down your counters every night, something like that. Again, pet care, random projects around the house. Like, you've got a hall coat closet that's out of control. Somebody else needs to organize that. And coordinating appointments at home, like letting the house cleaners in so you don't have to stay home to manage that. Errands, taking things to the post office, returning something to the store, going to the store to pick up something that someone forgot. All of these little tasks really add up throughout the week. And by writing them all down like this actually created the job posting that we could then put out and hire for. I think that's another part of that too, of when you're doing this, like, here's what I'm doing right now. Here's what I would like somebody else to do. Don't hesitate to move that stuff to the somebody else to do column. Even if you hate it or you think there's no way that someone else will do this, there's always somebody else who likes the work that you don't. And if you can just take this to your local, like, parent Facebook group or, town Facebook group, and you just say, hey, I'm looking for help with this. Does somebody have time? You would be, I think, really surprised the amount of people that would love to pick up, 5-10 hours a week of this sort of thing. They enjoy it. They have the time. Not everybody is living the same life that you're living. So don't let that slow you down of like, oh, well, no one will ever want to do this, or I'm not going to be able to find someone to do this. I think you would be surprised, especially when you get it all down in one place and you see how much it is. That's a good, like, part-time job for someone who would like, just something to do for a couple hours a week.
Those are all very common things that people are dealing with in their lives. I don't know if anybody could say like, oh, I don't do that thing, or I don't have to deal with those things. Some people might like those things, some people don't, but either way, people are dealing with those very things. These are not uncommon items. I think one other thing too that maybe is an addition, a bonus to this, is the mental aspect of it. Like the mental load, the mental space that is cleared because you're doing this thing. And I know your example always ends up being like the grocery list, like trying to figure out like what do we have? What do we need? What is the priority here to buy the items at the grocery store? Like that in itself is so mentally challenging when you're already running on empty from other things that you're doing, that just giving that to somebody else frees up your mind to do
absolutely
whatever, to relax, even. Go figure.
Yeah. I mean, if you had told me that like 10 years ago, like the hardest part of your day will be figuring out what everyone is going to eat every day. Like, that sounds crazy. But then even if you're married and you don't have kids, like that suddenly becomes a thing. It's very different than when you're single and like, I'll just eat noodles over the sink or whatever. But when you throw in kids and you've got school lunches to think about, you've got snacks. It's just, it just becomes this exponential thing that's very exhausting and hard to do. And again, when it's alongside, I think, another professional role, because I think being a stay-at-home parent is a professional job. It is a very difficult job. And so when we did hire our house manager, that's who we hired, was someone who, she's a stay-at-home mom. Her kids are older, so she has time during the day, and that is her job, and she enjoys doing it and she's good at it. So she's able to take that on because she doesn't also have full-time parenting and full-time job and this, that, and the other. So it just made more sense. It's, I think, a better flow of energy than trying to force it through my head. That's already, I don't have two brain cells to rub together to spark a thought half the time, especially not at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm very grateful that we made the decision to do it. And I resisted doing it for a long time for the reasons that we touched on at the beginning of, it felt like a moral failure somehow, like a personal failing, that I wasn't able to do all of this all of the time and that I needed help.
Yeah, which hopefully now you realize that is not the case. You're not superhuman. You don't need to be. And balancing things out is super important to be effective in the things that you want to be effective in. And I think that's one of the things that people realize when they do this stuff is, even if they felt guilty initially by doing it, they realize, wow, they're more effective at their role at work and they get more out of it and it's more engaging and they make more money doing it as a absolute benefit. Or you just have more time. one of the examples that I always remember is like the first day that we had the house manager in the house. It was 7:00 at night. We were both sitting on our daughter's bed, hanging out. Like, it wasn't like read a book, go to bed. It was just, we were hanging out before we started that go to bed process. And I looked around, I'm like, wow, we're both here enjoying time, doing nothing, wasting it, if you will. And it was so great because usually someone is doing something. Someone had to take out the trash. Someone had to wash the dishes. Someone had to, who knows what, clean the litter box. And we just didn't have to do any of those things. And therefore, we just naturally came together. And so that is a very intangible thing that is so impactful, especially if you value family, that you can't not outsource if you're not already getting something like that.
Right. And I think another intangible thing is people are less snippy with each other. They're, we're not run so ragged. There's a little bit more time and space to breathe. So we can just enjoy each other more, which I think is really important. But it's not, I still think, so I resisted it for the reason of feeling like I should be doing all the things, because of course I'm superhuman. What are you talking about? But it's also like, it's not cheap. So we are about 10 hours a week. It's a $28 an hour position. So it's not like it's, oh, you just throw away money. It's significant amount of money to invest. And I think that's the framing that it's important to have when you are outsourcing, whether it's this role or something else, or house cleaning, lawn care, whatever it is that you want to get off your plate. It is an investment because you're buying back your time. And arguably that is like time with like your little kids. Like they're only little for 4 or 5 years. And then suddenly like you blink and they're 18. Like mine's not yet. And I know it's going to happen. So time with them now is so important and it's so fleeting. So it is an investment, but it's hard because on paper, I could argue like if I take that same amount of money and invest it in the market, technically I would be wealthier on paper than I am because this is money that's going out the door, that's being spent. As the advisor, as someone who is building systems to help people increase their net worth, how do you think about that?
Well, you have to go back to what you're trying to get at. What do you value most? I was just having a conversation with a client yesterday, and we were talking about housing and trading up, basically taking where they live now because they no longer have to live in the place that they live because their daughters are going into college, and therefore the school system doesn't matter anymore, and the tax rate is high, so they're going to go somewhere else, but they might want to buy a more significant house, a bigger, more expensive home. And one of the things he said is this is a financial decision, but it's also not. Right? There's very much a life decision that they're making here that takes out these spreadsheets and puts in, how do I want to enjoy my time, or how do I want to live my life? And I think that's what you're talking about here, because you're not exchanging your time to be able to work and make more money, which in some cases you're using the leverage, like I mentioned before, to do. It's no, I just want to spend time with my daughter because I'm not going to get this day back again, because she's 4 now. She will be 5 next year, and she'll be 25 soon enough. And you can't use money to get in a time machine and come back. So it's almost like it doesn't even matter. If I value that so much, let's not talk about dollars and cents. Let's talk about impact in family. And as long as you're not spending in a way that puts you out on the streets, then I think it's probably a valid decision if it's really going to give you that kind of value. It's a value exchange. Everything is a value exchange. There's trade-offs to be made. And in this case, I don't think it's even a question of whether it's worth it or not for you.
Yeah. And that makes me think of things I've heard before. And I think there's actually research done of like the percentage of time that you spend like with your kids or your parents, like, but it's just the bulk of the time that you spend with your kids is over by the time they're 16. Like, and you think about your own life, like what you were doing from 16 to 18 and 18 on, like you're not usually spending it with your parents, like, 8 hours a day. You're moving on, you're living your own life. So just reflecting that back on, well, your kids are going to be doing the same thing. That's not a bad thing. That's what they're supposed to do. But I think when you frame it that way, it really underscores how important it is to manage your time very carefully, especially when, for most people, like the time that it's most important to spend with their kids is like when they're, 10 and under, or teens and under, coincides with the time that it's most important to be showing up at work because it's your peak earning years. And that's a really, really hard competing priority to untangle. So using your money to buy back time in every other area that you can outside of you have to be present at work and performing, and you need to be present with your kids and, building that relationship. Everything else, if you can outsource it, it's such a valuable thing that you're getting and that you're doing for yourself, because it allows you to focus on those moments that, like you said, Eric, you can't get back. And just to bring this all back to a tangible, strategic, financial planning aspect, all of this is why it's so important to prioritize your savings rate. Saving 20, 25% of your gross income as the first thing that you do, with your deciding where does my money go. If you take care of that, the other decisions become a little bit easier because you've already taken care of that long-term aspect. You put the money away for the future. Now you can focus on how do you want to live today.
So looking at this, we've talked about some of the obvious things that you can outsource, some of the benefits of doing so, but there are certain maybe surprising upsides that you might reveal by experiencing the outsourced lifestyle that you do. And one of those is simple as I didn't have time to even think about what I might want to be doing with myself and the hobbies that I might want to participate in. And now that I have this free time, I can actually say, oh, what is it that I want to do? Oh, I want to play more golf. I want to, do some woodworking in my basement. So I'm going to create a bench and start to do something like that. Like things that you just have put on the shelf or just completely forgotten about because you don't even have time to think about what you need to be doing, never mind what you might desire to be doing if you had all the time in the world. Right? So that stuff can show up and that changes everything. Like if you can do something that you really can engage in and enjoy doing, and it's peace of mind for you, and it's just relaxing, and you don't think about anything else but the thing, and you really enjoy that. Like that gives you so much energy, mental energy to bring back to your day, and allows you to continue to move on and be more powerful in your daily life. Like that is significantly intangible and something that you should hope for when you outsource. Another thing might be improving relationships. I think you hinted at this where if you're getting rid of all the things that you're doing, you don't have to argue about who's doing the dishes or who forgot to go to the store. Like things are getting done and you can actually be at peace with your wife. That to me sounds amazing. Right? Like we get that, and it gets disrupted by the stresses and the pressures and the things we got to do. So getting rid of those pressures and stresses, not that you get rid of all of them, but getting rid of the ones that you can outsource allows you to be present and enjoy more time with family, your spouse, even in-laws for that matter. Like anybody, you can be in a good mood with your family.
When you were saying intangible upsides, benefits, that was definitely the thing that came to mind. I did say it earlier, but just everyone not being in such a pressure cooker environment, because I don't even think it's like, oh, someone's not pulling their weight or whatever. Everybody's got stuff going on, and everyone is probably trying their best most of the time. And no, marriage or household is ever going to be 50-50. I feel like that is the best relationship advice I ever got. It's the advice that I give if I'm asked, is that expecting 50-50 is just a recipe for disaster. Some days you're going to have 80% to give and your partner's going to have 20, and it's going to be the other way around sometimes. Sometimes you will have nothing and they've got to do everything. It's an ebb and a flow, but it's still hard. Like if it's you've got the 80% and you're, full steam ahead, just because you might have the bandwidth for it doesn't make it easier for you. And doing that over time, like it's tough. Like it's hard for everybody. That's also what I've learned from being a parent, is that it's just hard. It doesn't matter what your setup is. It doesn't matter, what your relationship is like. Obviously there are things that are going to make it harder or easier, but it is tough no matter how much support you have or don't have. It's just a hard thing. So by releasing some of that pressure, by outsourcing, I think that's what makes things a little bit easier, I guess, is just having another party in to take off some of that load, especially when you are in a place where maybe you have 20% and your partner has 20%, and it's not anybody's fault. Nobody's, trying to get out of anything. It's just everyone's tired. Everyone's got a lot going on.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And there's one other thing I think was a surprising benefit to all of this. And the one that I like the most is kids see that their parents are prioritizing time and well-being. They learn that it's okay to ask for help and to create structure in life so that it's less about being overburdened and more about balance and enjoyment. And like that to me is such an intangible, again, that's the word of the day, the intangible nature of some of this stuff. It just to be able to show your kids and model for your kids that it doesn't have to be a rat race, that you don't have to be on the hamster wheel 100% of the time. You can still work hard. You can still be committed. You can still be giving your all. And to be able to do that and have free time and be at peace with yourself and your family and treat people well because you're not stressed out of your mind, that to me makes it all worthwhile. And I'll spend every dollar if I can get that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely created a big shift for us when we started focusing on how can we use our money to buy back our time and prioritizing and naming our time as our most valuable resource. Knowing money is important, but you can make more of that. You can't make more time.
Yeah.
And we would love to hear from you if you have been thinking about this, if you've actually done it in your own life and seen a similar shift, or if you have questions on, you've been thinking about this and you just need a little bit extra guidance on how do you actually put it into place? How do you implement it? You can connect with Eric on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find him, Eric Roberge, or you can go to beyondyourhammock.com. Email us at team, T-E-A-M, at beyondyourhammock.com. We would love to continue the conversation and hear what you've experienced, or again, take any questions that you might have on this topic or any others around using your money for life. Thanks for listening to another episode of Money for Life, hosted by Eric Roberge, CFP and founder of Beyond Your Hammock, and me, Kaylee Roberge. Our show is produced and edited by Steve Stewart. If you want to learn more about wealth management and hiring your own personal financial advisor, visit beyondyourhammock.com. And now for the legal stuff. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice, and may not cover all critical, complete details of every situation discussed. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the host or the podcast. Please consult a qualified professional about your specific situation before making any financial decisions based on this podcast or any other educational content designed for a general audience.